Work when other people aren't working. What's the meaning of that? I'm going to explain more on today's video. Now, I can remember many years ago, I was speaking to a gentleman who was a real estate agent. And interestingly enough, he would work more on the weekends and take some of the work days off. And the reason he did that, he told me, is he realized that most of his competitors weren't working on the weekends. So he had an advantage. He could get through to people when other people weren't trying to get through to them. And that's very interesting, because what I've found is down the years, if you're willing to do what other people aren't willing to do and willing to try things in a different way, like break kind of norms, you're more likely to get traction. So for example, using that aforementioned example, the real estate agent, not many people will call up a potential prospect on the weekends. It's probably against social norms, but it certainly worked for him. And what I've often found is breaking things that are considered normal is very profitable. And interestingly enough, we're at the start of the year, and last year I was kind of analyzing what went well, what went right. Unfortunately, we had a great year, a record-breaking year. 2019 was great for us, but we did another 52% growth last year, which is great. But what I found fascinating about looking at the year is the best periods were from March until May, and secondly in December. Now, what's interesting about both those periods is March until May, March, April, May was when people were so worried about the virus. Most people were spending less, most businesses were switching off adverts, most people were being very cautious, defense mode. Now, in that period, I made the decision to scale up even more what I was doing, and it worked very well. It was a great period, and I think one of the reasons it was a great period was other businesses were just not in the game. They were not trying to be in the game. They were just thinking, oh, let's see what's going to happen. They weren't being brave in that period. And likewise, what I've often found is the holiday season, most companies, they are not working, right? They're being a bit defensive. They assume that nobody wants to do business over Christmas and New Year. But what I found is Decembers for me are often my lucky charm. In the last 3 years, Decembers have always been kind to me, and this year as well, or should I say last year now, 2020, December was a record month for us. And it just shows you a number of things that you shouldn't assume that other people are just like you. Just because you don't want to do something over Christmas or New Year doesn't mean your customers might not want to do something. But it reminds me of what the gentleman from real estate once told me when I was younger. And I was quite surprised by his particular argument, and that's that if you're working when everyone else is working, that's great, we all need to do that. But at the end of the day, if you're willing to press on the accelerator button when other people are not working, it's always a bigger advantage. 2008 and 2009 is another example of that. That was one time when some of the big boys got knocked off their perch by some younger dynamic companies who actually came in and kind of disrupted that space. And likewise, those people who were brave in that period could really take market share. What a lot of people did during that period is they took a step back. They said, well, let's just wait to see what happens. But the sensible people, even a day after Lehman Brothers collapsed, they actually increased how much they would spend on their business, like ad spend or whatever, as long as it made sense, that is. They didn't decrease. So if you can be brave during those moments like a 2008, 2009, a COVID crisis, those unexpected crises, maybe something like 9/11. I'm sure that the businesses who invested one day after 9/11, when the competitors were not investing, even if they were in the travel industry, were rewarded many times over. So fortune does favor the brave. However, often fortune favors the brave when other people are not being as brave as usual times.